Hi, this is Mike from Boulder, Colorado again. This is the second major video of the series that I wanted to do. The first one we covered some general ideas and tips that may be of useful to you. Now I'd like to just kind of walk you around this side of the camper as it normally would be set up when I'm going camping. Obviously, I'm not in the forest, I'm in our driveway, but it'll give you pretty much the same sensing. Normally, I would have the awning always out. It's just that for this, it just doesn't add that much to it. But let me just start working from one end to the other. The top part here is, I've seen quite a few different commentaries and videos about using Reflectix and other items to actually put a sunscreen kind of material on top of your sleeping area. And I wholeheartedly agree, that makes such a difference. In my case, I happen to have a couple of what we used to call space blankets, but they're kind of like a survival blanket. One color is often a bright color. I like the olive drab, and one silver. Well, what I found is when I stretched one out, it basically covered the sleeping area. So lo and behold, I actually had exactly what I needed. So how to make this work? Well, again, I pulled out my little sewing kit again with my sailor's palm and used some short pieces of shot cord, the type with a hook on the end. Just cut off one end, looped it over and sewed it together. So two ends, I have these hooks on it, and then two ends down below, I have a short length of cord that I'll use to secure the lower end. So how do I actually attach it? You can kind of see from up here, this little item here is where the clamp for the lower part of the trailer hooks on when you're closing it. I just drill a small hole into it and then hook the other, that part of the space blanket or solar blanket into it. Then I can just simply take the other end of this and then walk it around, hook it to the other side. Then the lower end, I can tie it off. Now you could have, I guess, something all the way down, but once again I simply use my sailor's palm and sewing and sewed a little plastic ring. So all I have to do then is take this, run it through, put a little loop and knot onto it. And it was real easy. And then the only other final thing is about, if you don't have some sort of clamp midway, wind will easily get underneath it and flap it around. So these are what you kind of like call tarp clamps. Allow you to attach onto a tarp and attach a rope. I like the type which you can actually screw it down. So I just kind of get one of these. Again, at the edge here you see there's a little like lip. Just put that on and clamp it down. And it stay put even in quite windy weathers. It makes such a difference. So I have one for the double bed here and one for the back end. And it takes very little time, and these survival blankets really are fairly inexpensive. So all you need is, again, some short little shot cord things and the ability to sew canvas. So that's up here. Obviously, we've seen much about using Reflectix material to make inserts for your windows. I may make one for the side and the back. Normally, the one side will always be in the shade, so I don't bother with that one. But again, it's marvelous. I ended up finding I could get quite a long roll of it on Amazon. Much cheaper than buying it by the foot of the yard at my local hardware store. Okay, kind of coming down a little bit. Eventually I wised up and realized I do need to try and keep the trailer quite level, and that's to ensure the performance of the little refrigerator when I'm on propane. So I wanted to come up with, I used to use simply a little bubble level to do, but again eventually broke down and decided I'd get something a little better. Going back to my good old marine catalogs, West Marine, these are actually heel indicators. You often will have them on a sailboat to try and adjust your heel of angle. So I got two. One I put on the side here, which gives me the fore and aft, front and back, and then another one right here which shows me on the side. Very easy to read. They came with their stick-on backing. It was really easy to attach. So I certainly would say that's a great addition to get. In terms of leveling it, I finally broke down and decided to get one of these leveling devices here because it's a pain in the butt to try and roll the trailer back onto different level things. So it's kind of heavy. What I discovered that they don't make a size for the smaller wheels that I have. But I went ahead and buy it and noticed that if I slide this underneath, the wheels directly resting on one, I cram a piece of wood in from the other side and I can crank it up and it levels out just fine. It also very much anchors the trailer in place. You notice the red case below? That again is my insulated pizza carrier. Get the large size, it fits perfectly. So I always take this with me and set that up. Look at a few other things here. Oh, let's see. Oh. This may look kind of funny. It's just a little bag here, and I have it hooked to what's called a rope loop. I just say it's an eyelet. This is my recycled container. Invariably, we're going to have beer and other items, and certainly in Colorado, we'd really try and recycle all that stuff. So rather than try and have it stored somewhere in the trailer, I just have this hooked, and all those containers just going out, and I unhook it when I head home, and we're ready to go. One other thing which has improved things for me is all the trailers have crank down stabilizers in the back. None of them come with them in the front. So the back of the trailer always is quite stable. The front, for many years, is just that single wheel. So even though you're reasonably there's always a little rocking back and forth. I took it into a trailer place and asked, what would it cost to install a crank down thing. And they said, well, it's a little awkward because there's a pipe that comes down here which carries the wire that is used with the lift device. But they said they could install something for, I think it was like $90 each. And then lo and behold, at my good old hardware store, McGuckin's, I came across this device in the auto area. And what it actually is, it came with a much longer rod, and you could actually use, let me crank this up. It had a very long rod here, and as far as I could tell, it was used, you could go across the bed of a pickup truck and anchor this so you could put a tarp onto it. Well, it seemed to me that if I simply cut the thing down, see if I can get this back now, Yeah, okay. Yep. If I could just cut it down to size, I could probably position it right at the angle here. And so once I get the trailer leveled, let's see, I would just kind of bring this out. It takes a little bit of finagling to get it perfectly straight. And then I simply crank it up. And as long as that's tight, lo and behold, it perfectly stabilizes the whole front of for the trailer. So for basically 40 bucks, 20 bucks each, I now finally have a nice stable front end of the trailer. Okay, looking at other things that's worked for me is always bring a step stool. Invariably when you're putting out your awning and stuff, even just hooking up this, you know, if you're less than 6 feet tall, you're definitely going to use it. And so I always pack this. Normally this will ride in the car with me. I've come to like these plastic containers. I forget who the maker is actually, but it's a very stable, you know, type. And this one I label for outdoors stuff. And so whenever we could go ahead and expect to have a campfire, not so much now, this is where I'd have the basic stockage. And for campfire stuff, I always find a little bag of self-lighting charcoal perfectly for getting fires going. I have my tablecloth with hooks, clamps on it. I always bring a collapsible shovel for use with that. Let's see. My little prongs here for cooking hot dogs or marshmallows. Just anything. Oh, and of course, an inflatable container. I will never do a fire unless there's a water source here. I can have this container full right next to it. You never want to let a fire go out at night just by pushing stuff over to dirt. We've had some really drastic fires from that. And this is just a little cloth laundry bag, and this will next is where I put in my little rug. This will fit inside the camper when I'm going, but then I immediately bring it out and can leave it outdoors. This red container is also very critical. This carries my scissor jack, so in case I need to replace the tire, it carries a couple of the little plastic pads here for the support in the back. And this little bag now has my key items here. This style tent peg is the best that I've ever run across. It's very strong. It's aluminum there. It has a little area on top that you can run a line through. This I use to anchor on the awnings. You got your legs coming down. I pound that in next to the leg, run this around a couple times and tie it, and it really secures the leg from, you know, shifting or being around. Even though the instructions for the camper essentially says once you anchor the legs you're fine, my experience is with the winds in Colorado you better have some ties. So I use this where at the top of the awning where it comes out, I had to sew another little D-ring in, and I use this very bright parachute cord and come out at about a 45-degree angle so it points toward the other side. And I'll always put in ties to to further anchor the awning. And this little container works just fine for storing all this stuff. Let's see. Okay, that kind of takes care of this. In terms of the area where I sit, I always liked having this little carpet. I've seen many different trailers have a very heavy weight carpet. This is much lighter. I simply got it at Home Depot, I think. And what I like about it is I can readily roll it up and fold it and store it in that bag. For sitting area, I've come to like these chairs. They're not quite as comfortable as I've seen others, but the biggest thing for me is they kind of collapse very well, fit into a bag, and I can store them in the trailer. If there are any of the ones with more of a frame, that's going to be much more difficult. To make them comfortable, I bought a couple of these nice cushions I use inside, but with that it's very comfortable. I'll normally have another chair and two little collapsible tables we've just had for years. I put one here and one right next to the cooking area. And it just makes it enjoyable for sitting out. Okay, pushing on. This now is my cooking area. As most everyone's kind of noticed, it's better to do your cooking outside to keep any and all smells. When I purchased the camper, there was an option where I could get a very heavy-duty shelf and a special grill that came with it, and it could hook up to the power supply, to the gas line inside. But I already had a grill, my little propane stove, which I've had for many years, and it still works just fine. By keeping this, it also gave me the flexibility if I want to cook somewhere else, or even at one time when we lost power in our house for 36 hours and it was rather cold, I simply brought this in and cooked us our dinner on it. So I still like using this. Yes, you're using these 1-pound containers, and it's always a concern of how much is left in the container. Well, it's pretty easy to do. Take a full container and an empty one. If you have a little scale in your kitchen that measures grams or ounces, weigh the full one, weigh the empty one. And you can just create a little graph, which then readily gives you the ability to estimate how much fuel is left into a partially full one. This one, I've just marked 35%. And once you have that information, I could just make a little kind of sheet like this, which gives me the weight of the container in grams and the percentage full. So anytime I go out, I always can ensure that I at least have one full one and two partial ones. This little device I just happened to pick up was being thrown out. It's a radiant heater, works on again the propane. I find it's just great early morning or evening. I just set it up and you can see the heat coming from that from quite a ways. Additionally, if you put it on a table and put it vertically like this, it becomes another stove. So, and a couple times when I've needed one more stove or one more burner, I've used this as well. And it fits very easily into one of these plastic cartons. For storing cooking supplies and stuff, obviously the main storage is inside, but I just don't want to be stuck with coming in and out all the time. So I've had this little metal shelving system for years, and it's just perfect. I keep on here all the key cooking utensils that I'm going to use during the day, and as you see, I can even have a little flap to cover it, so if want to make it look a little nicer. The key ones that I use all the time is I have a kettle, which in the early morning and the evening I always fill with hot water and bring it inside for washing. This actually came with the innards to make coffee. Now I just kind of fill it, get it boiling, bring it inside, and use Folger singles. 2 fill this, 3 if you really want it strong. The other stuff I typically have a skillet, a pot and pan, a little cast iron item I use, perfect for doing sausage and things. And the one big surprise for me was at one time simply visiting my Goodwill thrift store, I saw this pressure cooker and never really used one before, but it seemed to be a nice big size for doing pasta or everything. And then I started to realize you can get all sorts of single meals that typically are frozen, often the size of a bowl, and when you put it in your microwave, all you're doing is heating it up, and they're sealed plastic. So I've started, when I go out with maybe just 2 of us, at least 1 meal, maybe 2, we'll find some of these frozen little meals. Stouffer's lasagna is a perfect one. Either single or the double portion fits perfectly into this. There's some bowls, Mexican, beef and broccoli type bowls. Put them in the ice chest frozen. They'll be fine for a couple days. I just plop in, put in about 1/2 inch of water, plop them in, stick it on the burner here. Once it starts perking a little bit, kind of turn it down, give about 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 20 if it's large and frozen. And you can't overcook it. And when they're done, turn off the heat, let it cool down for a bit, and I just pick it up and bring it inside. And there's no cleanup. So I've done with that quite a lot more. The last thing, which was more or less just a project here, is I was trying to find a camping stove. And I really didn't see much of anything online. Not that I'm going to do a lot of baking, but I like to be able to reheat muffins, biscuits, and stuff. And just one day, while again visiting my local thrift store, I happened to see this little cast iron skillet plate, which wasn't in very good shape, and right next to it was an old style saucepan. And lo and behold, the saucepan fits right over it. Oops. Hopefully, is it still working? Can you hear me? No? Yes or no? Oh, okay. So after some fiddling around, I came up with this design. Okay, there's the skillet. It's a little cookie cutter to give a spacing. A tile to kind of give some protection from the radiant heat. And this was like a little trivet standoff plate with some heavy aluminum foil on it. And it can take 4 biscuits or 3 large ones. To finalize it, when I first started doing it, even with the ones you can buy commercially, without some sort of cover on it, a lot of the heat you're putting into the thing immediately gets radiated out. And I noticed it just took quite a while to heat up. So I noticed or knew that there's a type of material, I think called a plumber's blanket or something. This is fireproof material that can be plumbers use to put around pieces of wood when they're brazing or soldering pipe. It doesn't catch fire. So similar to what I did on these other things, I just made a cover. The only difference is this time, to sew it, I ended up going to the craft store, and in their jewelry area they sell different weights of copper wire that can be used in jewelry. So in this case, just the thread became copper wire. So it provides a nice cover, provides a level of insulation, and then finally, to just figure out the temperature inside, this is just a thermometer that you typically would have on your grill as a replacement one. So when I wanted, let's say, heating some blueberry muffins in the morning or so, I'll put them in here, start the heat underneath it moderately high, track the temperature. Once it gets up to about 250, I'll just turn it off. And it'll continue to retain the heat and continue to heat up. And so whenever I'm finally ready to get them, I just pick this up and use it. But this has worked out quite well. And it's very easy to make if anyone wanted to do something similar. So, and I'll normally always just keep that next to the cooking area in its own case, mainly because if it gets wet, then you're using a lot of energy just to dry out the covering. Let's see, last thing I would just say here is this is where the gray water waste goes. This is just about a 3-gallon container. I find after breakfast, when I'm finished washing dishes and stuff, that'll be moderately full. I'll kind of walk off to the side, find a thirsty bush or a tree, which will always kind of appreciate it because it's normally not too dirty, and then after dinner in the evening, and that kind of takes care of all of that. And again, this kind of setup here I just really like. I can keep all the main dishes or the stuff that I'm cooking with right here. Again, if you're worried about what it looks like, I can just put a little cover over it, and it's kind of set to go. So that kind of finishes it, the outside. The only last thing I'd just say is then over to a side at the nearest picnic bench, I'll have my blue water container and my ice container if it's summer and I'm wanting some cold drinks. But this has worked for us. Oh, I guess the last thing I'd just highlight is this is simply a clip-on LED light. Typically I find that at like Target in the school area, and I bought 2 of these. One I put out here, and I just have it connected in down below, and as you can see, I'm using one of my little 2 polar trailer connectors. So anytime I'm connecting something like this into my systems, I use these all the time. So that's it for the outside. Next we'll do an inside tour. Thank you.